It's time to do some bike maintenance with ShyBike. Look how beautiful winter we have here in Poland now in January 2017, just outside of my ShyBike studio. Wonderful. But the winter being that beautiful can be extremely dangerous and harsh on our bikes. So today I am briefly sharing with you 3 tips on how to maintain your bike through the winter. Tip number 1, rinse your bike. Not just wash, rinse your bike. Tip number 2, dry your bike. Tip number 3, protect your bike against salty water. And now let's just break those down. Number 1, I said rinse the bike. Some guys are just using bucket of water and some sponge or a rag, which is good, and they try to make the bike looking so good, being clean, but they don't make sure that the water goes exactly through all the bolts, all the chain links and the cassette and brakes and everything. So if I only had like 3 minutes to do anything with my bike after ride, I would rinse it, try to dry it, and then do the 3rd step I'm gonna share with you just in a minute. So make sure there is no salt on the parts on your bike. It can be dirty. This one isn't like 100% clean. I already did those 3 steps on this bike. So there is still some dirt and sand, but there is no salt. It's number 1 enemy of our bike. So once I've rinsed the bike with the water, let's go to step number 2, which is dry the bike. We don't want to leave our bike just in the room, like hang it on the wall and go and do some other stuff. We have to keep it dry. So first off, I will just spin the wheels very well, both front and rear. Use the rack to dry it a little bit. Then we can spin our crankset very quickly backwards, so that the chain will drop some water, and then use the rack to take off the water from your chain. This is what I did, and look how my chain looks like. It looks pretty good. You don't want any water to come into your hubs, bearings and the chain links like over the night, because the rust can really ruin your steel parts. So really important, but very easy. Rinse the bike, dry the bike. And now the 3rd one means protect the bike against the salty water, and that's maybe the most time consuming. So number 1, I'm using different lubricants for my chain. Not such a lubricant which would be good for sunny weather in the summer, but some of these I have, for example, 2 wet finish line cross country. This one being more dense and being more water resistant, I would say. Your chain will always be more messy. Your pulleys on the derailleur, your chain rings will be more messy, but the chain will be protected against the salty water, which is so important. I've made another episode on how to lube the chain, so I'm not doing it right now, but just remember, you should do it after your ride. I'm even putting the lube on the chain and leave it overnight, and then the next day I would use the rack to clean it. Okay, so that's number 1. Now number 2, that would be the thing I would do like every other month, and that would be to remove my fork from the frame and put a lot of grease just around the bearings. So we are using the grease in order to seal our bearings. So the grease I'm having here, that's the Shimano one. I'm using it for pretty much everything. The hubs, sometimes also for the bolts and the headset. It works so well. I did the video on how to do the stuff with the headset, so you can look it up. But I would make sure that I'm putting so much grease just down here on the head tube, so that when I'm putting the bearing with the fork back on it, it will press out, like squeeze out some grease coming out here, and then I would just use the rack to clean it, but I know there is no water coming in. And I would do the same with my bearings over the crankset. I'm going to show you here on my Cannondale. You can see the grease just around here. It's pretty messy, so it will always catch more dirt, but there is absolutely no water. There is no chance the water comes there, because just in between those shims there is a lot of grease. I put it there. And the last thing is, if you have the time, I would do it at least before the winter, would be to take your bearings. This is the cartridge bearing. This could be a headset bearing. This could be also bearing in your hubs. But if you have angular bearings in the hubs, same thing. I've opened it by removing this seal. You can use something like, for example, the paper knife, in order to open it very gently from both sides. As you can see, there is some loop inside, so the bearing is okay. But for the winter, I would just put a lot of grease here. Just plenty of grease on the bearing. And I must tell you, over, I don't know how many years, maybe 20 years of really maintaining the bike by myself in the mountain biking, I've never had to replace headset bearing or even the bearings on my wheel, because I would do that for the winter. And then when I'm putting this seal back, I can see that the seal is also pushing out the grease. That means there is lots of grease inside. I understand some of you would say we should not fill it with like 100% grease. I know, maybe one third of the space inside the bearing should be with the grease. But also I've talked on the Eurobike with some of the manufacturers of those cartridge bearings, and they say cartridge bearings weren't really made for cycling. These are made for high RPMs, for some machines that are spinning like crazy. And then less grease is enough for those machines. But here in the bicycles, we are not spinning we are not spinning at all in the headset. So if you put just 1/3 of the grease there, it won't be, evenly transferred to all the balls. So just make sure, at least for the winter, it's just fully packed with the grease. There will be always some more friction, stiction there, but it will be just protected against the salty water. Okay, so these are my tips. I find those working pretty well if you are commuting on the bike. In the city there is lots of grease, and now the last one is to use some kind of a spray like Brunox for your damper and for your fork. Okay, so this little thing is without silicone. It's not abrasive to the rubber we have on our damper and on our fork, which is really important. And first off, I will just use this paintbrush, right, to just take off all the sand that is here, and also here on this dust cover or dust seal here. So as you can see, there is no dirt here. I don't push it inside the seal, but I do it just like that. And then we use the spray, just shake it to wake it, and then not much, just like something like that. And then it will just evenly go around the seal, which is super important. Do the same for this one and help myself with the O-ring to keep it just around the damper, and then put the bike on the floor and work it very, very well, like 15, 20, 30 times with the damper, with the fork. I would even leave it overnight, and then the next day I would just take off the excess of my Brunox. Brunox works very well. I recommend that one, for example. And then the bike is ready for the next ride. Okay, these are my three tips that I've broken down for you. If you have any further suggestions, you know where to put those. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I love doing those episodes. Let me know what would you like to see on this channel, and I'll see you soon. Bye.